Why am I in a yelling mood? I just got done with a block of news stories that was. It's going to actually go up on my YouTube here in a little bit. And that's why I had to end the live. It's not so that I could regenerate a crowd of people. It's that I had talked about that, but that literally was not it. I had to stop because I have been blocked and banned from going live, and I want to post that set of stories. I want to post that set of stories up so people can hear the ludicrousy of it. I want people to hear how much it is ignorant to believe that this is a culture war. This is not a culture war. This is a genocide. This is not a cultural war. This is an effort to remove a group of people from the face of the earth while at the same time condoning the very behaviors they accuse others that they want to get rid of doing. So, anywho, moving right along, dig-a-dum, dig-a-dum. So, I was over on, I was a guest on the live this morning of, some of y'all know the Southern Gay political live that gets done every morning. I happen to be on there, and he was talking about this story, and I want to share this with you. Laura Ann Carlton was a 66-year-old LGBTQ plus ally and mother of 9. Last Friday, she was shot and killed by a 27-year-old man. So, Carlton, a 66-year-old mother of 9, who was a very staunch and outspoken LGBTQ plus ally, was shot and killed by a 27-year-old man. As of right now, the identity of this man has not been released. And the pure and sure motives of this are unknown, because, once identified, police tracked the individual down, and after a violent confrontation, killed him. Now, Carlton owned the Magpie clothing store, and was very well known to fly an LGBTQ plus supportive rainbow flag outside of the store. According to the San Bernardino Police Department, the individual approached the flag outside the business and ripped it down. When Carlton confronted him about it, the individual pulled out a firearm, shot the business owner multiple times, and then fled the scene. When deputies attempted to contact the suspect, a lethal force encounter occurred in which police and the man exchanged gunfire, and the police officers ended up killing the suspect. Now, in the course of talking about this over on Scott's Live this morning, there were many people who wanted to argue that this suspect was a family member, and that there was no clear evidence that this was somehow related to Carlton's advocacy of the LGBTQ plus community. Now, there is no clear indication of what evidence there is because police are still investigating and none of the details have been released. But I wanted to share with you that story so I could share this story. In the UK, an attacker has been sentenced to over a year in jail after he punched and threatened a man whom he thought was gay using a deactivated AK-47 rifle and bayonet. Marcin Skalamowski, 41, assaulted an unidentified man in an unprovoked attack after the man tried to talk to him at the St. James Wine Bar in South Helier, Jersey on the evening of 20th of March. Skalamowski was removed from the bar after the assault, but returned 10 minutes later to threaten the victim, whom he assumed was gay, with the two weapons. Crown Advocate Luke Setti, prosecuting, told the court that Skalamowski asked door staff if the victim was still inside before he unzipped a bag containing the deactivated AK-47. While under interview, Skalamowski, who admitted to assault and possessing an offensive weapon, said he had nothing against LGBTQ plus people, but wanted them to keep themselves to themselves rather than bothering straight people. And then there's this story I wanted to share. During a segment on far-right news network Newsmax, Shamika Michelle, who identifies as a personal empowerment advocate, stated, "We need to be more homophobic. We need to take it up a notch because these people have continued to do this because we failed to shame them. We failed to put our feet down and stand tall and say what we believe without the fear of being canceled." Now, the conversation on the program initially focused on Admiral Rachel Levine, who serves within the Department of Health and Human Services as assistant secretary to the Department of Health. The conversation at this point devolved into mocking Admiral Levine. According to Michelle, "Look at us. This is silly to me. We have put in place people that 20 years ago would have been locked in an insane asylum. We've put them in prominent positions to completely confuse our children, and this is just silly." The group lamented over the fact that they cannot oppose trans people's existence without being called bigoted. What else would you call it? Just curious. When you argue somebody's existence is invalid, what else would you call that? But that's when Michelle declared that it was time for people to turn their homophobia up a notch, no matter the consequences. If we do not stand tall, we are going to lose. And I wanted to do this story. A victim of a Friday shooting at a punk show in Minnesota has been identified. A gunman opened fire into a backyard venue, killing August Golden and striking 6 others. Minneapolis police are looking for 2 people who fled the area. It all happened at an outdoor music show in the backyard and garage of Nudiland, a residential performance space south of Minneapolis shortly after 10 p.m. We believe one of the persons was being targeted by a shooter, Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara said at a press conference on Saturday. We know 2 suspects ran from the scene. I can't confirm that there were 2 shooters, though. The show was underway on Friday as Quinn McClurg snapped pictures of her friends when gunmen targeted the LGBTQ plus attendees. A poet and journalist attending the University of Minnesota, McClurg was quickly welcomed into DIY shows like Nudiland. DIY shows are one of the only regularly safe places for trans folk, queer folk, punks, and everybody to get together and socialize, because everybody you know and love is there. Because you've worked in the encampments with, people you've done protests with, everybody is there. Nudiland was formed 2 years ago as an extension of its sister venue, Disgraceland. In addition to being a venue, Nudiland is also home to many of its punk patrons who reside in the house. One of the residents who is trans reported, "This is not a unique space. So many of the bunkhouses I started going to as young as 16 in and around Southside Minneapolis were the same way." On the night of the shooting, there was a celebration because of a new album release by one of the local bands. Minnesota Public Radio News posted an Instagram photo with a comment from a user who said they were at the event. "They were trying to flirt with me and my friend, who both identify as lesbians, and we told them we weren't interested and not to touch us. They got upset and eventually walked off, and less than a minute after, they started firing." A GoFundMe has been set up in support of the victims of the attack. So, we wonder where all of this sentiment is coming from, right? You have somebody on Newsmax telling people we need to up our... We need to be willing to step right up and defend ourselves against the LGBTQ plus community. We have an individual who was willing to take an AK-47 into a wine bar to threaten someone he perceived to be gay. And we have a shooting in Minneapolis into an LGBTQ space. And then we have this. Pastor Greg Locke, during a recent sermon, said that we drive demons out all the time, but we've not reached a place where we understand you have to pull down the stronghold that the demon left behind. Because someday something, when you cast out the spirit of sexual perversion, it's got to leave you. So does the person still struggle with porn because they still have a demon? No, they struggle with porn because the fortified house is still there, and the stronghold has to be pulled down. Locke then took an Easton baseball bat, wrapped a Bible around it, and broke down a Barbie house with it. No, Lee, he's not insane. And that's the point. He's not insane. He is representative of a mindset and worldview. He is representative of the belief system. You see, that's the thing. Evangelical means nothing. Evangelical used to represent something. It doesn't mean anything now. And that's why I talk about conservative evangelical fundamentalist fascism. CEFF. Conservative evangelical fundamentalist fascism. Because now conservatism, evangelicalism, and fundamentalism have all been united together. That has been paired with a growing attitude of nationalism that has now stepped over to fascism. We know that this is fascist because we can take the fundamental identification of fascism and put it right next to the Seven Mountain Agenda that has risen up as the focus of the CEF churches in the United States. Now, if you don't know the basics of fascism, there are principal tenets of fascism. Now, depending on how you go about it, it could be anywhere between 8 and 14 as defined. But fascism, as we typically know it, was defined by Benito Mussolini when he wrote in 1932 The Doctrine of Fascism. Now, I'm trying to find these so I can read them off so I don't get them incorrect, because I don't want to be accused of anything. All right. 14 defining characteristics of fascism. Powerful and continuing nationalism. All right. A disregard for human rights. Identify enemies as a unifying cause. The supremacy of the military. Widespread sexism. Controlling mass media, obsession with national security, the religion and the government are intertwined, corporate power is protected, labor power is suppressed, a disrespect for intellectuals and the arts, obsession with crime and punishment, rampant cronyism and corruption, and fraudulent elections. Now, these are the sociological defined 14 defining characteristics of fascism. So hold on to this, okay? If you hold on to those 14, now we're going to look at the Seven Mountain Mandate, which is a part of the conservative, evangelical, fundamentalist mindset of churches. The Seven Mountains of Influence is what this is based upon. The number one influence, religion. Number two, family. Number three, education. Number four, government. Number five, media. Number six, arts and entertainment. And number seven, business. Now, according to the Seven Mountains of Influence movement, the Seven Mountains of Influence movement within conservative, evangelical, and fundamentalist viewpoints, they see that it is their God-ordained mission to reclaim control of those seven mountains of influence and reestablish within a country the dominion of those CEF controlled mountains of influence. "14 defining characteristics of fascism, including nationalism, oh shit, let me find that again. Get out of the way. Medium, come on, dude. Get out of my way. Here we go. Powerful and continuing nationalism compared to sucks trying to get all of these straightened out here. Okay. Powerful and continuing nationalism partnered with the mountain of influence number 4, which is the government. A disdain for the recognition of human rights would jump under a broader understanding of religion as the determining factor of rights. Identification of enemies and scapegoats as a unifying cause, which is very much a matter of the underlying principle of conservative evangelical fundamentalism is that there is a war between good and evil, and one side is good and the other side is evil. A dichotomy. The supremacy of the military, going back under the government. Also, rampant sexism. Can we just talk about the idea of complementarianism within conservative evangelical fundamentalism? Controlled mass media. Mountain of influence number 5. The media. Obsession with national security. See again, government. Religion and government intertwined. their whole agenda. Corporate power is protected. Mountain of influence number 7, business, while labor power is suppressed. Mountain number 7, business. The disdain for the intellectuals and the art. Mountain of influence number 6, arts and entertainment. Obsession with crime and punishment, going back to right and wrong, good and evil. Rampant cronyism and corruption, very much a matter of education, business, government. And fraudulent elections. Listen to how they talk about the elections. The 7 mountains of influence and the 14 essential elements of fascism wrap around one another in lockdown. Christian evangelical fundamentalist fascism is the marriage of the 7 mountain mandate and the 14 tenets of fascism. We see within Christianity in the United States and spreading around the world through its missionary efforts the continuation of a conservative evangelical fundamentalist fascist worldview. And the rhetoric that they pronounce draws in to their sphere of influence not Christians. This is the funny thing. It does not draw in, well, I should say it does not draw in just conservative evangelical fundamentalist Christians. It also draws in trans-exclusionary radical feminists and trans-exclusionary radical gays. TERFs and TERGs buy into the CEFF mentality. It draws in white supremacists. It draws in proto and neo-Nazi organizations. It draws in radical, militia-based separationists within the United States. And somehow, in all of this, people want to claim that Christianity is not an influence in the worldview and the political climate of the United States. When you have diametrically opposed organizations partnering up around a similar ideology, the movement of these groups is all around an organizational effort by CEF-based legal, political, and social organizations. You have the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank that promotes CEFF ideology. You have the Alliance Defending Freedom, which argues for and fights for and writes legislation for CEFF ideology. You have the Family Research Council, which works at every level of the government, from local to federal, trying to influence CEFF ideology. You have Moms of Liberty, who are actively working to get involved in every level of political structure, from book club dog catcher level local elections to the United States federal government, to promote a CEFF ideology. and you have radical feminists, radical gays, white supremacists, proto and neo-Nazi groups, as well as radical militant separatists, all joining alongside of that. This is what we call a worst-case scenario. This is Southern California experiencing a hurricane, earthquake, and wildfire from the Santa Ana winds. This is a hellstorm event. This is not just a political rhetoric. You have created right now in the United States the most perfect combination of the most horrific political climate in the history of this country. And there is one group of people who are being targeted by every fucking one of them. So folks, please tell me that you understand that this is a genocide. Because if you don't understand that, you are part of it. You are trying to bring it about. So, where are you going to stand on this? Where are you going to stand when it comes down to determining who you are? Are you going to be an advocate? Are you going to be an ally? Are you going to be an accomplice to those who are being wiped out? Or are you going to be part of the crowd? Are you going to just be part of the voices? The voices that are very loud saying, crucify them, crucify them. Because even if you're not saying anything, silence is complicity.